The year is 719 in Asia, and two warring empires have risen up to challenge each other for dominance of the continent, those being the Empire of Frostspire in Korea led by Empress Sora with Celestial Jade, and the Empire of Blazing Sun in Japan led by Emperor Kato with Phoenix Ashes, and this is the story of their clashes and the rises of another power. Both empires are deciding to invade Zhonghua modern China, but will take some time to prepare first. The Empire of Frostspire decides to prepare by researching firework weaponry to prepare for the coming attempted conquest. Empress Sora, driven by her ambition, orders her best scientists and engineers to delve into the ancient texts and forgotten secrets of their land. They begin to develop fireworks into a new form of weaponry, capable of terrifying their enemies and striking fear into the hearts of those who dare oppose them. The sound of explosions and the smell of gunpowder fill the air as they experiment and innovate, pushing the boundaries of what is possible with their newfound knowledge. In the bustling workshops of Frostspire, the researchers work tirelessly. They create rockets that fly through the air, leaving trails of sparks and destruction in their wake. They craft bombs that burst with blinding light and deafening noise, capable of leveling city walls and sending soldiers fleeing in terror. Each new invention is tested and refined, their power growing with every successful trial. The Empress watches from afar, her eyes gleaming with excitement and anticipation for the moment she can unleash this fiery arsenal upon the unsuspecting lands of Zhonghua. Meanwhile, the Empire of Blazing Sun decides to attempt to develop steel armor and weaponry for their attempted conquest of Zhonghua. Emperor Kato, the shrewd ruler of the Empire of Blazing Sun, is not content to rely solely on traditional weaponry. He has heard whispers of the advancements made by the Empire of Frostspire and knows that victory will come only through innovation. In the fiery forges of Japan, his blacksmiths toil day and night, crafting weapons of unparalleled sharpness and durability. They experiment with new alloys and techniques, pushing the limits of their knowledge. Each sword and suit of armor is imbued with the essence of the phoenix, symbolizing the eternal flame of their empire. The Emperor's advisors present him with a prototype of their latest creation, a sword made from a new type of steel, folded 1,000 times and coated in a lacquer that shimmers like the sun. The blade slices through the air with an unnatural ease, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Kato's eyes widen as he takes the weapon into his hand, feeling its power surge through him. He knows that with such a weapon in their arsenal, the Empire of Blazing Sun can counter the fiery might of Frostspire's fireworks.
The empires of Frostspire and Blazing Sun then both decide to begin their attempted conquests of Zhonghua, and thus end up clashing with each other. And it ends up that their clash will determine who conquers Zhonghua, and thus, the battle for Zhonghua begins. The battle for Zhonghua is a spectacle unlike any seen before. The frost cannons of Frostspire roar across the battlefield, sending icy shards and balls of fire into the ranks of the Blazing Sun's knights. The Knights of Blazing Sun, clad in their fiery steel armor, advance fearlessly, their swords ablaze with the essence of the phoenix. The clang of steel against steel, and the hiss of ice meeting fire echo through the valleys as the two forces collide. Empress Sora, astride a majestic frost dragon, leads her troops from above, her strategic mind calculating every move. Emperor Kato, on the other hand, stands at the forefront of his phoenix-mounted samurai, his fiery blade a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Their armies are evenly matched, their determination unyielding. For days, the battle rages on, each side pushing the other to the brink of defeat, only to be driven back by a new invention or tactical maneuver. But in the end, between the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun, the better prepared, and thus the victor and empire that conquers Zhonghua is Frostspire. Their superior research and development of firework weaponry had given them the edge they needed. The frost cannons had punched through the steel lines of the Blazing Sun's defenses, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. The dragon riders of Frostspire had rained down a hailstorm of explosive ordnance, decimating the phoenix-adorned knights below. Emperor Kato, despite his valor and the fiery resolve of his soldiers, is forced to retreat back to Japan. His defeat is not just a loss of land, but a bruise to his pride and a stark realization of his empire's technological gap. His advisors, though disheartened, are not defeated. They recognize that to challenge Frostspire's dominance, they must adapt and innovate. POV switches to following a newly made orphan named Alpha, whose innocent civilian parents were just murdered right in front of him. Alpha begins to cry, and then something awakens within him. Dark and shadow magic, powers that are in that era the marks of one who is seemingly demonic in nature, and thus must be hunted down and destroyed. The soldiers of both Frostspire and of Blazing Sun that are there then begin to attack Alpha, and he is forced to run off into the wilderness and survive out there off of the elements alone. The dark and shadow magic within Alpha grew stronger with each tear that fell from his eyes. It coursed through his veins, fueling a rage that had no end. As he sprinted through the wilderness, the trees and plants around him shivered with the intensity of his power. The snow itself seemed to part in fear of his presence. The two empires are now going to attempt to conquer the kingdom of Khoton, but first we'll do some preparation. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to research Chi manipulation through the valuable celestial jade that they possess. Empress Sora, determined to maintain her empire's dominance, orders her scholars to delve deeper into the mysteries of the celestial jade. They work tirelessly, studying ancient texts and conducting experiments in hidden chambers beneath the palace. The whispers of their research soon reach the ears of the populace, sparking both awe and fear. In the heart of Frostspire, the alchemists and mages begin to unlock the secrets of the jade. They discover that it has the power to manipulate the very life force of those who can harness it, allowing them to perform feats that were once the stuff of legends. Slowly, they develop a new type of warrior, one that can bend the elements to their will and move with the speed of lightning. Empress Sora, intrigued by these new abilities, decides to personally oversee the training of these elite soldiers, known as the Jade Guardians. They become the vanguard of Frostspire's military might. Their abilities in combat are unmatched, and their loyalty to the Empress is unshakable. The Empire of Blazing Sun, meanwhile, decides to attempt to develop advanced siege weapons to possibly give them the upper hand in the upcoming attempted conquest. Emperor Kato, feeling the sting of defeat, calls upon the greatest minds of Japan to devise a new strategy. They toil in secret, crafting machines of war that dwarf even the most powerful frost cannons. These new weapons, known as the Phoenix Siege Engines, are made of steel that has been tempered in the fires of Mount Fuji and are capable of unleashing fiery destruction upon the enemy from afar. The Emperor knows that to face Frostspire again, they must be ready to challenge them on their own terms. And now, the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun both begin their attempted conquest of the Kingdom of Khoton, and thus, once again, end up in a clash to decide who ends up conquering the kingdom. The battle for Khoton begins with the Jade Guardians of Frostspire marching forth, their green aura casting an eerie glow across the desert sands. They face the Phoenix Siege Engines of Blazing Sun, belching fire and smoke as they advance. The air is charged with tension, as both sides know the fate of the continent hangs in the balance. The first volley of frost cannons echoes through the desert, their icy blasts shattering the steel shields of the Phoenix Siege Engines. The samurai of Blazing Sun charge in response, their swords blazing with the fiery essence of the Phoenix. The clash of steel against jade resonates, as the Jade Guardians parry and strike with inhuman speed and precision. The ground trembles with the impact of each blow, and the air crackles with unseen forces. Empress Sora, riding her frost dragon, surveys the battlefield from above. Her eyes narrow as she watches the Phoenix Siege Engines lay waste to her advancing lines. She signals to her generals, and a new wave of Jade Guardians is sent forth, each one a human embodiment of the elemental power of ice and wind. They weave through the chaos, their blades carving a path through the enemy ranks. Emperor Cato, standing atop his own siege engine, the Phoenix's flame, feels the ground tremble as the Jade Guardians approach. He knows the power they possess, having encountered them in previous skirmishes. With a fiery resolve, he calls upon the ancient power of the Phoenix Ashes, imbuing his sword with a blaze that could melt the very jade they wield. The clang of steel on jade fills the air as the two forces collide. The Phoenix siege engines unleash a barrage of fire and steel upon the Jade Guardians, their fiery breath incinerating those who dare to come too close. The Guardians, in turn, manipulate the very air to form shields of swirling wind and ice, protecting themselves from the onslaught. The battle is fierce and evenly matched, with neither side gaining significant ground. But then, suddenly, due to unknown causes, all of the Phoenix siege engines stop working and will need to be repaired after the battle. But as for during the battle, they are now useless. Emperor Cato, shocked and enraged, leaps from his now dormant machine, his sword aflame. He charges into the fray, his eyes fixed on Empress Sora. She, too, has dismounted her frost dragon, and the two leaders meet in the center of the battlefield. Their duel is a dance of fire and ice, their blades a blur of motion as they clash with the fury of their empires behind them. The two rulers are evenly matched, each blow they strike resonating with the power of their respective elements. The ground around them cracks with the intensity of their clashes, sending shockwaves through the combatants. The soldiers of both empires watch in awe, their own battles momentarily forgotten as they witness the struggle of their leaders. Empress Sora then reveals her own chi manipulation skills and gains the decisive advantage in the duel, forcing Emperor Cato to flee or otherwise lose his life. The Empire of Frostspire, now in control of the Kingdom of Khoton, starts integrating its people and resources into their own empire, focusing on the potential of Celestial Jade to enhance their military capabilities. The Jade Guardians are revered and feared, their power a clear sign of the Empire's dominance. Meanwhile, Alpha is nearby, having unleashed a dark and shadowy spell that broke the Phoenix siege engines, before then retreating back into the wilderness and slaying an animal and then eating it to survive. The two empires then decide to next attempt to conquer Mongolia, but first, they must prepare themselves again. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to further research chi manipulation. Empress Sora, intrigued by the power of the Celestial Jade, decides to invest heavily in research to enhance the capabilities of her Jade Guardians. The Empire of Frostspire constructs a grand academy dedicated to the study of chi and its manipulation. Scholars and warriors from across the lands are drawn to this center of knowledge, eager to harness the power within themselves. The Empire of Blazing Sun decides to attempt to harness the power of the Phoenix Ashes to develop a new type of defensive barrier called the Phoenix Shield. In the Empire of Blazing Sun, Emperor Cato is not one to rest on his laurels. Having witnessed the terrifying power of the Jade Guardians, he is determined to find a way to counteract their chi manipulation. He gathers his most skilled blacksmiths and alchemists and orders them to develop a new type of defense using the sacred Phoenix Ashes that are scattered across Japan. After months of relentless research and experimentation, they succeed in creating the Phoenix Shield, an impenetrable barrier that can absorb and dissipate any form of energy, including the very essence of the Jade Guardian's chi attacks. Meanwhile, in the wilderness, Alpha has grown into a formidable force. His control over the shadows has reached new heights, allowing him to manipulate not just his own shadow, but the very fabric of darkness itself. He has become a being of both legend and fear among the local tribes, who whisper his name in hushed tones around their campfires. His power is a double-edged sword, as it isolates him from the world he desperately wishes to protect. Despite his ominous presence, he uses his abilities to help those in need, building a small band of devoted followers who see in him the potential for peace amidst the chaos of war. the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun then begin their attempted conquests of Mongolia, and it once again ends with a clash between the two empires over who will conquer Mongolia. The battle for Mongolia begins with a series of skirmishes along the border, each side testing the other's defenses. Emperor Cato, wielding the power of the Phoenix Ashes, has transformed his troops into an unstoppable force. His soldiers march forth, shielded by the fiery phoenix shields that now adorn their arms. They face the Jade Guardians of Frostspire, whose power has grown exponentially under Empress Sora's guidance. A clash of steel and jade echoes across the vast Mongolian steppes as the two sides meet in a battle that seems to have no end. But the battle will eventually have an end, and thus a victor. The Empire of Frostspire, with their superior technology and the power of the Jade Guardians, manages to outflank the Emperor of Blazing Sun's forces. The Mongolian lands are painted with the colors of Frostspire as the once blazing sunsets now give way to the cool hues of victory. Emperor Cato, though defeated, does not concede defeat. He retreats to the heart of Japan, regrouping his forces and vowing to never again underestimate the power of his enemy's chi manipulation. Alpha is out in the wilderness and training and briefly unleashes some sort of dark tendril things for only a moment. The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun now next are going to attempt to conquer Vietnam, but first decide to again do some preparation. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to create some sort of sacred relic. Empress Sora, recognizing the need for a more potent weapon to ensure victory in the upcoming battle for Vietnam, calls upon the most talented artisans and alchemists of Frostspire to create a sacred relic that can amplify the power of her Jade Guardians. In a hidden fortress deep within the icy mountains of Korea, the artisans work tirelessly, forging the relic from the purest celestial jade and infusing it with the power of ancient dragons. The sacred relic they forge resembles an orb of glass or crystal of jade, gold, and various gimps embedded into it, with a variety of unknown powers. But the first they discover is raising the dead as undead soldiers. The Empire of Blazing Sun then decides to prepare by attempting to create a Phoenix Flame Catalyst aiming to harness the essence of Phoenix Ashes for powerful new weapons. Emperor Cato, determined to counter Frostspire's newfound relic, calls for the greatest minds of his empire together. In the hallowed halls of Kyoto, they work day and night, seeking to understand the ancient texts that speak of the Phoenix Flame Catalyst. The Phoenix Flame Catalyst is rumored to be able to not only enhance the power of their steel weaponry, but also grant them the ability to manipulate fire itself. The artisans and alchemists of Japan labor tirelessly, mixing the ashes of ancient phoenixes with the finest steel and precious metals, crafting prototypes that glow with a fiery aura. Emperor Cato's quest for the Phoenix Flame Catalyst leads to an unexpected alliance with a rogue Frostspire Jade Guardian, who defects with knowledge of the relic's true weakness. The defector, named Li Wei, reveals that the Celestial Jade, while powerful, has a vulnerability to the pure flame of the Phoenix. He suggests that by embedding Phoenix Flame Catalyst into their own weaponry, they could potentially negate the reanimated soldier's unholy power. Intrigued by this revelation, Emperor Cato orders his scientists to work around the clock to incorporate this new knowledge into their designs. In the bustling workshops of Kyoto, the sound of hammering steel and whispered incantations fill the air. The Phoenix Flame Catalyst is integrated into the very core of their new swords and arrows, each one now a symbol of hope against the dark tide of the undead. As the first successful prototypes are forged, the aura of the Phoenix Flame is undeniable, casting a warm, fiery glow that seems to dance and pulse with life. Emperor Cato, feeling the weight of his decision, personally oversees the final stages of the weaponry's development. He understands that the power they are attempting to harness is volatile and dangerous, but the fate of his empire and the lives of his people are at stake. With each successful creation, his resolve is bolstered. He knows that when the time comes, these weapons will be the key to their survival. The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun begin their respective attempted conquests of Vietnam. And, in the end, once again, it ends in a clash between them over whose conquest will be successful. Empress Sora, riding her frost dragon, leads the charge of her undead army into the dense jungles of Vietnam. The very air seems to chill as her necromantic powers extend, raising the slain soldiers of the land to fight once more. Yet, the blazing heat of the jungle and the fiery spirits of the Phoenix Flame Catalyst-infused weaponry of the Japanese forces are ready to meet them. The battle for Vietnam unfolds with an intensity never before seen in the history of the two empires. The undead soldiers of Frostspire, driven by the sacred relic's dark power, face off against the Phoenix-empowered warriors of Blazing Sun. Each side is equally matched in their determination and ferocity as they clash in a whirlwind of steel, flame, and shadow. The once verdant landscape is scorched and frozen in a battleground of unbridled power. Emperor Cato, riding at the forefront of his forces, watches as the Phoenix Flame dances upon the steel of his soldiers' weapons, cutting through the cold embrace of the undead. Yet, the necromantic might of Empress Sora's reanimated legions is relentless. They march forward, unfeeling and unyielding, driven by an unholy command that seems unstoppable. The clang of metal, the hiss of flame, and the moans of the risen dead fill the air with a symphony of war. In the heart of the battle, the rogue Jade Guardian, Li Wei, fights alongside Emperor Cato, his own jade weaponry crackling with the power of the Phoenix Flame Catalyst. His knowledge of Frostspire's tactics allows the Blazing Sun forces to anticipate their opponent's moves, striking at their weaknesses. Despite the chaos, a strange camaraderie forms between the Emperor and the Defector, as they both fight for a future free from tyranny and fear. On the other side, Empress Sora, perched on her frost dragon, commands her undead army from above. Her eyes are cold, her heart filled with the ambition of conquest. Yet, she is not without doubt. The sight of the Phoenix Flame, a symbol of purity and rebirth, stirs something within her, a memory of a time when the world was not so torn apart by greed and power. The tide of the battle shifts as the undead begin to fall, their icy grips loosened by the searing heat of the Phoenix Flame. The Empire of Frostspire's advantage is slowly being chipped away by the unrelenting blaze of the Blazing Sun's weaponry. Sora feels a flicker of concern as she sees her once mighty force dwindling, and she knows that she must act swiftly if she is to maintain her grip on Vietnam. With a fierce cry, she descends from the sky, her dragon's wings casting a shadow over the battlefield. She confronts Emperor Cato, her eyes burning with a newfound resolve. The two leaders engage in a fiery dance of steel and ice, their weapons clashing in a symphony of sparks. The ground beneath them cracks as they channel their elemental powers into the fight, each blow resonating with the force of their empire's futures. The battle for Vietnam reaches a climax as the mystical powers of the two leaders threaten to engulf the land. The Phoenix Flame Catalyst and the Jade Guardians, dark magic meld in an explosive display of power. The spectacle is so intense that even the combatants on the sidelines pause to watch their fear and awe palpable. Emperor Cato, fueled by his desire to protect his people, lands a critical blow on Empress Sora's dragon. The creature roars in pain and fury, releasing a burst of ice that sends Cato stumbling backward. Sora, dismounted, uses the opportunity to strike at Cato with her frost-covered blade. However, Cato's agility and the protection of his Phoenix armor allow him to dodge and counterattack, their swords clanging in a fierce duel. Their fight is a dance of fire and ice, each blow resonating with the power of their empires. The Phoenix Flame Catalyst glows brighter with each swing, while Sora's blade leaves a trail of frost in its wake. The ground around them cracks and splits, unable to withstand the immense force of their clashes. The soldiers of both sides watch in awe, their own battles momentarily forgotten. As the duel intensifies, the child named Alpha approaches the battlefield, his shadowy presence unnoticed by the preoccupied readers. His eyes flicker with curiosity and power as he observes the spectacle. The dark whispers of his newfound abilities grow louder, urging him to intervene with a wave of his hand. The shadows coalesce into a monstrous form, ready to serve him. Alpha sends in the shadows, before then returning back into the wilderness, needing food due to being malnourished due to having had to survive in the wild alone. The duel reaches its climax as Emperor Cato unleashes a fiery blast from his sword, only to have it absorbed by the dragon shade construct around Emperor's sword. The dragon roars in defiance, its scales glowing with the power of the absorbed flame. Sensing an opportunity, Sora charges at Cato, her weapon slicing through the air with deadly precision. However, Cato is not one to be outdone. He parries her attack and counters with a swift strike of his own, aiming for the dragon's throat. The blade slices through the dragon's neck, and the creature dissipates into a cloud of smoke. The impact sends Sora stumbling backward, her eyes wide with shock. Emperor Cato leaps forward, his sword alight with the Phoenix's fiery essence. Sora, however, is not one to go down easily. She gathers her strength and channels the power of the sacred relic, summoning a barrier of bone-chilling ice to meet Cato's flaming blade. Their weapons clash with a deafening roar, sending shards of ice and embers flying in every direction. The soldiers on both sides of the battlefield stop to watch the spectacle, their breaths held in anticipation of the outcome. The air crackles with energy as the two leaders continue their dance of death, strike more powerful than the last. In the end, the duel, and thus the battle as a whole, is determined by which is more durable. Phoenix Ashes infused steel or Chi-infused celestial jade, as that will determine whose weapon will break first, and thus, their ability to continue the duel. The dragon construct, now engulfed in Phoenix flames, writhes and roars in pain. Yet, it stands firm against them. Relentless onslaught of Emperor Cato's fiery blade. Empress Sora, her eyes narrowed in concentration, feeds more of her chi into the construct, pushing it to withstand the intense heat. Emperor Cato, his eyes gleaming with the light of his own power, lands a fierce blow that shatters the dragon's jaw with a grim smile. Sora unleashes a torrent of ice that encases Cato's sword, freezing the flames and sending chills down the spines of the onlooking soldiers. Cato, unfazed, breaks the ice with a flick of his wrist, sending shards flying. The clang of steel on jade echoes through the battlefield as the two continue their dance, each move calculated and precise, until the duel now comes to its last few clashes. Now at the point that whoever's blade is less durable will be shattered. The air around them crackles with energy as their swords, one of fire and one of ice, meet in a shower of sparks. Emperor Cato's blade, once a tool of destruction, is now a symbol of hope for the people of Japan. Empress Sora's construct, a testament to her mastery of Chi and her empire's ingenuity, holds its own against the fiery onslaught until the final clash. And the one whose weapon shatters is Empress Sora. Her dragon construct, once a mighty force of nature, now lies in ruins, shattered by the relentless power of Emperor Cato's Phoenix Flame Catalyst. The impact sends a shockwave through the battlefield, knocking soldiers from their feet and silencing the cacophony of war. The moment hangs in the air, the sound of the shattered ice echoing through the land. Empress Sora, stunned by the sudden turn of events, stands defenseless before Emperor Cato. The flaming blade of the Phoenix Flame Catalyst points at her heart, the fiery light casting a stark contrast against her pale, defeated expression. And Empress Sora and her empire of Frostspire are forced to retreat, meaning that Emperor Cato and his empire of Blazing Sun has won the battle and thus conquered Vietnam. The empire of Frostspire is defeated, but not destroyed. Empress Sora, her spirit unbroken, leads her people back to Korea to rebuild and regroup. The loss of the battle weighs heavily on her, but she knows that there is still much to be done to ensure the safety of her empire and the future of her people. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the conquered lands, Alpha watches the aftermath of the battle with a heavy heart. He feels the pain and fear of the conquered people, and his rage towards the warmongering empires grows. His powers, a mix of dark and shadowy energy, have been honed by his years of isolation and his deep connection to the suffering around him. He knows that he cannot stand by and let these empires continue their destructive paths.
The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun learn of a child or young adult named Alpha that lives out in the wilderness and who has dark and shadow magic, which makes him a demon who must be destroyed. And thus, the two empires start out by sending out some troops to hunt him down and destroy him, but he is able to avoid them, eventually leading to both empires sending their entire armies after him to hunt him down and destroy him. Emperor Cato, now aware of Alpha's potential threat, orders a massive manhunt across Asia. He sees Alpha as a beacon of darkness that must be eradicated before he can threaten the peace he has worked so hard to establish. His armies march through the lands, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake as they seek out the one who could bring about their downfall. Eventually, both armies corner Alpha, forcing the poor innocent boy to awaken and unleash his tendrils of darkness out of necessity in self-defense. Why, you really think of me as a monster this much? Why, you want me to be a monster so badly? Fine. If you want me to be a monster so badly, then I'll be exactly the monster you want of me. Alpha yells out while crying so hard that his face is covered in tears of blood, as he then twists his body into looking much darker, while still definitely looking human, but one as twisted physically as he has been emotionally and mentally by these warmongering empires. The two armies stop dead in their tracks, their leaders looking on in shock as Alpha's power surges. The very air around them seems to darken, and the shadows on the ground stretch out like tendrils, reaching for the soldiers' hearts. The soldiers of both sides begin to feel a cold fear, one that freezes the blood in their veins. Alpha then suddenly appears in front of them, and a massacre ensues, with Alpha's tendrils of darkness then instantly impaling and throwing around and ragdolling soldiers and commanders alike. The once celebrated Jade Guardians and Phoenix-clad warriors of the Blazing Sun are no match for the primal power that Alpha now commands. The battlefield becomes a chaotic dance of death as the tendrils of darkness move with unparalleled speed and precision, leaving a trail of horror in their wake. Then he stops right before the general of the army of the Empire of Blazing Sun, recognizing him as the man who brutally murdered his parents right in front of him, his poor, innocent civilian parents. The general, seeing the malice in Alpha's eyes, drops his weapon and falls to his knees begging for mercy. But Alpha is no longer the innocent child seeking peace. He is a force of vengeance, driven by the very darkness that has consumed him. With a flick of his wrist, the tendrils of shadow envelop the general, lifting him into the air. The general's screams pierce the battlefield as Alpha slowly squeezes the life out of him, his eyes filled with a cold, unyielding anger.
TH is WHAT you get. Murderer, Alpha says. His voice twisted and broken with rage and vengeance, and yet no truly unjustified malice as well. This man murdered many innocent civilians. This is merely his punishment for his crimes. The general's body goes limp, and the shadowy tendrils release him, letting him fall to the ground with a sickening thud. The soldiers of the Blazing Sun stare in horror, their bravery evaporated in the face of the monstrous power they've just witnessed. Emperor Cato, watching from a safe distance, knows he has underestimated Alpha. He orders a retreat, not willing to lose more men to this unpredictable and terrifying new enemy. The few that refuse to retreat don't even live long enough to regret it, as they are swiftly ended by Alpha, and even the undead army of Frostspire crumbles into just piles of bones from a mere glance at them by Alpha, who decides to go by an identity that many of the soldiers had shouted at him as an insult: the Shadow God, or rather, Shadow God Alpha. The news of the Shadow God Alpha's emergence and his terrifying power spreads like wildfire across Asia. The people of the empires whisper in hushed tones about the creature that had brought the two most powerful leaders to their knees. Some speak of him with fear, others with a strange fascination, and a few even whisper words of hope and liberation from the tyrannies of the emperors. Shadow God Alpha remains neutral in the background, though bringing about a true, genuine utopia of darkness for those who either seek it out or just happen across it while already desperate. And out in the wilderness or exiled like Alpha himself was, he decides to leave the two empires be, and will only strike to completely and utterly destroy both when the time is right. Years go by, and the whispers of the Shadow God grow louder. His deeds, though feared, are also whispered about with a strange sense of hope by those who have suffered under the tyranny of the two empires. They speak of a land shrouded in darkness, where the weak are not preyed upon by the strong, and where peace is not just a fleeting dream but a reality. The Empire of Frostspire and Empire of Blazing Sun then decide to respectively attempt to conquer Thailand, but especially after the devastation they faced after trying to destroy Alpha, they will need to prepare first. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to further test the other possible abilities that the sacred relic might possess, considering that it is a relic of light, and thus, necromancy couldn't possibly be its only ability, and well, there are no records on it, considering they are the ones who created it. Empress Sora, seeking to restore her empire's power, gathers her most trusted advisors and scholars. They delve into ancient texts and forgotten lore, searching for any mention of the relic's other capabilities. After months of research, they stumble upon a prophecy that speaks of the dawn of the eternal night, a time when the light of the relic would be eclipsed by the power of darkness. The prophecy also speaks that the only way that Alpha can be defeated, even if only temporarily, and in that the destructive ideal that is the light can continue involves the sacred relic ending up in the west, in the hands of a future god emperor, whatever that is. Anyways, they proceed to begin testing the sacred relic to discover any other possible abilities it might possess. The Empire of Blazing Sun, meanwhile, attempts to research and develop the Inferno Ignition Core. This will be a specialized artifact that harnesses pyrokinetic magic to create control. Intense bursts of fire energy. Emperor Cato, feeling the weight of his empire's future on his shoulders, personally oversees the development of this new weapon. He understands that with the rise of Shadow God Alpha, traditional warfare may not be enough to secure their dominance. His engineers and mages work tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of their knowledge. The Inferno Ignition Core is a marvel of ancient and modern technology. It is a crystalline sphere pulsing with fiery energy, capable of igniting even the most daunting of fortifications. Emperor Cato, hopeful, orders the construction of these cores to be prioritized, integrating them into their existing siege engines and weaponry. The sight of these new weapons sends a wave of fear through the remaining territories of the continent, unsure of who will be the next to face their wrath. The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun begin their respective attempted conquests of Thailand, in which at the end of, they will have to clash. But this time they both have a very specific strategy prepared. The Empire of Frostspire will have Sacred Relic, summoned undead support Sacred Relic enhanced Jade Guardians, while the Empire of Blazing Sun will utilize a strategy based upon solar convergence, harnessing concentrated solar energy to create a devastating solar flare spell in the heart of Thailand. The ancient capital of Ayutthaya is a strategic target for both empires. Its rich resources and central location make it a key piece in their expansionist ambitions. The empires begin their sieges, each side eager to claim victory before the other can fully deploy their new weaponry. The Empire of Frostspire marches with their enhanced Jade Guardians, now bolstered by the power of the Sacred Relic. The undead soldiers march in unison, their eyes glowing with an eerie blue light as as they follow the commands of their living counterparts. The people of Ayutthaya watch in horror as the city's walls are pounded by the relentless force of the Jade Guardians, their once invincible fortifications crumbling before them. On the other side of the city, the Empire of Blazing Sun prepares its own assault. The Phoenix siege engines, now equipped with the Inferno ignition cores, stand ready to unleash their fiery fury. Emperor Cato stands atop the highest tower, surveying the battlefield with a steely gaze. His mind races with tactics and counter-moves, anticipating the moment when the walls of Ayutthaya will fall. The air is tense with anticipation as the two sides clash. The Jade Guardians of Frostspire breach the city gates, their flaming swords and shields slicing through the air as they engage the TIE defenders. The Phoenix flame catalysts of the Blazing Sun rain down upon the enemy, setting ablaze everything in their path. The roar of battle is deafening, a cacophony of steel clanging against steel, of fire meeting ice, of life fighting against the relentless tide of the undead. In the heart of the city, the Inferno ignition core is activated. A brilliant beam of solar energy pierces the sky, charging the Phoenix siege engines with a power never before seen. The machines roar to life, their cannons spitting forth a fiery hellstorm that consumes the Jade Guardians in a fiery embrace. The ground shakes as the Phoenix flame catalysts reach their peak, and the very air seems to burn with the intensity of their flames. Empress Sora, standing atop the ramparts of Ayutthaya, watches in horror as her once unbeatable army falters. Her eyes narrow with determination, and she calls upon the power of the sacred relic. A shadowy aura envelops her, and she points at the Phoenix siege engines from the sky. A swarm of undead warriors descends upon the Japanese forces, their cold touch extinguishing the fiery projectiles. On the ground, the battle is a maelstrom of chaos. Emperor Cato, clad in his gleaming golden armor, fights with unbridled fury. His blade, now infused with the essence of the Inferno ignition core, slices through the shadows, leaving a trail of molten steel in its wake. The clang of metal and the screams of the dying fill the air as the two sides fight tooth and nail for every inch of ground. Yet amidst the carnage, there is a moment of stillness. Shadow God Alpha stands alone, his power growing with each battle cry and death rattle. The very fabric of reality seems to twist around him, his eyes burning with a cold light that sends shivers down the spines of even the bravest soldiers. He watches the battle unfold, his thoughts racing. He then, with a single point of his finger, nullifies the solar flare. The soldiers of Frostspire and Blazing Sun, caught in the middle of the fiery cataclysm, watch in awe as the blaze dissipates into nothingness before their eyes. The Phoenix siege engines fall silent, their fiery breath extinguished. The skies above Ayutthaya, once a canvas of fiery destruction, now hang heavy with a new, ominous presence. Shadow God Alpha then returns to his own growing and rising empire of shadow, leaving the two empires to finish their clash, him knowing that he must wait until the very end of their final clash before truly arriving to snuff them both out. The Battle of Ayutthaya rages on, but the sudden absence of the solar flare has left both sides in a state of confusion and disarray. The Jade Guardians, once unstoppable, now falter under the blazing sun, their undead forms struggling to maintain cohesion. Emperor Cato and Empress Sora, stunned by the sudden shift in power, regroup their forces and reassess their strategies. The Empire of Frostspire quickly regroups and focuses on instead just using the sacred relic to empower the Jade Guardians even further, and to further increase their chi levels. The Empire of Blazing Sun decides to deploy the main Inferno ignition core, focus fire on the remaining summoned undead, and perform a tactical withdrawal with plans of a decisive ambush. The Battle of Ayutthaya takes a dramatic turn as the Inferno ignition core's true power is revealed. The core's intense heat and flames engulf the undead warriors, turning them to ash and effectively halting the relentless siege. Emperor Cato, seeing an opportunity to regroup and reassess, orders his troops to retreat to the city's fortifications. The Jade Guardians, though powerful, are no match for the core's solar energy, and they falter under the relentless onslaught. Empress Sora, however, refuses to accept defeat. Drawing on the power of the sacred relic, she imbues the Jade Guardians with an unprecedented level of chi, making them impervious to the fire and granting them new abilities. They rise again, now empowered by both the frosty chill of Frost Spire and the ancient relic's Dark Arts. The battlefield shifts, with the reinvigorated Jade Guardians pushing back the blazing sun's forces. Emperor Cato, though surprised by this turn of events, does not waver. He orders his archers to rain arrows coated in a new, flammable substance on the Jade Guardians, hoping to exploit their vulnerability to fire. As the arrows fly, the core's energy surges, and the air around it crackles with the intensity of the sun's power. The arrows strike the Guardians, igniting them in a fiery blaze that seems to dance in stark contrast to their icy aura. Empress Sora, anticipating such a move, responds with a flurry of snowflakes that extinguish the flames, leaving the Guardians unscathed. She then commands her alchemists to deploy a new weapon, a fog of frozen crystals that descends upon the blazing sun's archers, blinding and disorienting. The battlefield is now a swirl of ice and fire, with the clang of steel and the roar of the Inferno echoing through the city streets. Emperor Cato then activates the full power of the main Inferno ignition core, which causes the entire blizzard to melt away, and even causes the Jade Guardian's chi to become useless. The blaze from the core is so intense that it not only burns through the fall, but also the very fabric of reality itself, creating a fiery maelstrom that consumes everything in its path. The Jade Guardians, once invincible in the frozen wasteland of Frost Spire, are now mere statues, their once potent chi dissipating in the face of the relentless heat. Empress Sora, undeterred, calls upon the power of the sacred relic, raising an impenetrable ice shield around the city. The flames of the Inferno ignition core crash against it, sending plumes of steam into the sky. However, the shield is not without its limits and cracks, and groans under the immense pressure, threatening to shatter at any moment. The full known might of the sacred relic with what is currently known about it just isn't enough to match the full might of the main Inferno ignition core. The Battle of Fire reaches a critical juncture as the ice shield trembles, threatening to collapse under the fiery onslaught. Emperor Cato, his eyes blazing with the fiery intensity of the core, advances, the heat from his blade now a constant inferno around him, his armor emitting a fiery aura. The Jade Guardians, though resilient, begin to falter as the heat becomes unbearable. Empress Sora, feeling the strain of the relic, knows she must act swiftly. With a wave of her hand, she summons a blizzard of unprecedented magnitude, enveloping the battlefield in a whirlwind of ice and snow. The flaming arrows and engines of the blazing sun are extinguished instantly, their fiery wake swallowed by the icy maelstrom. The Phoenix siege engines grind to a halt, their mechanical joints frozen solid, but then the entire blizzard is negated by the main Inferno ignition core, which produces enough heat that the entire Earth is warmed when it is active. The frozen ground cracks and splits, revealing molten lava beneath the city. The Jade Guardians fall to their knees, their very essence drained by the intense heat. The Empire of Frost Spire's forces are in disarray, their morale plummeting as their once unstoppable allies are rendered helpless. Empress Sora, her face a mask of horror, watches as the very fabric of her reality begins to unravel. In a desperate gamble, she merges her own chi with the sacred relic, unlocking a power never before seen. Ground beneath the city erupts, and a colossal ice dragon ascends into the sky, its scales gleaming in the harsh light of the Inferno ignition. The dragon roars, and its breath freezes the lava, creating a temporary reprieve from the relentless heat. But Empress Sora knows that she can't keep this up for very long, and knows that if she keeps her chi merged with the sacred relic, she will soon enough perish. And she can't perish yet, and thus, she uses this opening to organize a full retreat, losing the battle, but not dooming the Empire of Frostspire to losing the war, and thus, Thailand is conquered by the Empire of Blazing Sun. The Empire of Frostspire, though defeated in this battle, is not broken. Empress Sora, now with an even stronger resolve, returns to her homeland of Korea to bolster her defenses. She knows that the war is not over, and that the next battle will be the most crucial one yet. Shadow God Alpha thinks over that exact battle, and then forms the goal to change all of existence, all of reality that it is within, so that stuff like this and what happened to him can never happen again. The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun now are both going to do their respective attempted conquests of Cambodia, but we'll need to prepare first. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to research and integrate Nature's Aegis, a magical shield that enhances the Jade Guardian's resilience and adaptability in forested terrain. This enhancement would allow them to navigate and fight effectively in Cambodia's challenging environment, offering both protection and a tactical advantage. For weeks, the Frostspire's alchemists and mages tirelessly work in their labs, mixing potent ingredients and casting ancient incantations. They experiment with various jade artifacts and the essence of the sacred relic, seeking a way to harness the power of nature itself. Their breakthrough comes when they discover a way to infuse the Jade Guardians with the spirits of ancient trees, granting them the ability to manipulate the forest to their will. The news of this newfound power spreads like wildfire through the Empire. The Jade Guardians, once feared for their unyielding cold, now stand as guardians of the forest, their armor glowing with the life force of ancient trees. Their movements become swift and silent, blending with the foliage as they march through the woods. The Empire of Frostspire is now ready to face the challenges of the dense Cambodian jungles. The Empire of Blazing Sun attempts to develop Sunfire maneuver gear, lightweight magical equipment that enhances the speed and agility of the troops. This gear would allow soldiers to move swiftly and efficiently through dense jungle, setting up ambushes and quickly repositioning to outflank Frostspire's forces. In the workshops of Japan, the Empire's best blacksmiths and enchanters toil day and night, crafting these revolutionary pieces of equipment. They draw inspiration from the legendary Phoenix Flame Catalyst, weaving its fiery essence into the metal and steel of the gear. When activated, the gear ignites with the power of the sun, granting its user unparalleled speed and evasiveness. Emperor Kato personally tests the prototypes, his blades slicing through the air with newfound ease. However, the development of the Sunfire maneuver gear encounters a significant setback. The intense heat it produces is difficult to contain and control, often leading to accidents and injuries among the soldiers. The engineers struggle to balance the power of the gear with the safety of its users. Despite the challenges, Kato remains steadfast in his belief that this technology will be the key to victory in the jungles of Cambodia. After several iterations, the Sunfire maneuver gear is finally deemed ready for battle. The gear's successful implementation allows the Blazing Suns soldiers to move swiftly through the dense foliage, leaving trails of fire in their wake. The sight of the fiery apparition sends chills down the spines of the Frostspire's defenders. However, the gear's limitations become apparent as the intense heat attracts unwanted jungle predators and causes the gear to malfunction in the humid environment. The Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun then begin their respective conquests of Cambodia. But first, they have strategies for when they inevitably clash. The Empire of Frostspire strategy jungle enchantment has 3 parts. 1. Activate Nature's Aegis on Jade Guardians to maximize their adaptability in Cambodia's jungles. Use the environment to their advantage by blending in and setting up ambush points. 2. utilize magic from the sacred relic to create illusory terrain traps, confusing and misdirecting the blazing sun forces into disadvantageous positions. And 3. Conduct coordinated hit-and-run attacks from concealed positions, targeting key enemy units, and retreating into the jungle before a counterattack can be mounted. And the Empire of Blazing Sun strategy. Blazing Blitz also has 3 parts. 1. Equip troops with Sunfire maneuver gear to navigate swiftly through the dense jungle, allowing for rapid deployment and repositioning. 2. Implement targeted incendiary attacks to clear paths and flush out Frostspire troops from cover, forcing them into open combat, where the Blazing Sun forces can leverage their superior mobility. And 3. Use the enhanced mobility to execute flanking maneuvers, encircling Frostspire units and cutting off their retreat routes. Set up multiple layers of ambushes to prevent their escape into the jungle. And thus, the 2 empires' respective attempted conquests of Cambodia begin. The Empire of Frostspire initiates the jungle enchantment strategy. The Jade Guardians, now one with the forest, become invisible sentinels in the dense foliage. Their movements are silent, their strikes swift, and their power is terrifying. The Blazing Sun's initial forays into the jungle are met with a series of brutal ambushes that leave their forces reeling. The illusory terrain traps are particularly effective, with more than 1 unit of soldiers plummeting into deep ravines or being led into the jaws of hidden predators. Emperor Cato, watching the chaos unfold from his command post, orders his generals to adapt their tactics. They begin to rely heavily on the Sunfire maneuver gear, using the blazing heat to cut through the jungle and reveal the hidden enemy, the sight of their comrades burning alive or falling into pits filled with thorns. And venomous creatures fills the Blazing Sun. Soldiers with a mix of fear and anger. They become more aggressive, their movements less coordinated as they rush to conquer the jungle. The battle for Cambodia turns into a 3-way conflict as an ancient Khmer civilization, long hidden in the Anger jungles, emerges with their own mystical weaponry, challenging both Frostspire and Blazing Sun for control. The Khmer forces, led by a mysterious and enigmatic leader known as the Jungle Guardian, deploy ancient artifacts that manipulate the very fabric of the jungle itself. These artifacts are capable of creating impassable thorny vines that snare the Sunfire maneuver, gear-equipped soldiers, and summoning swarms of venomous insects to harass the Jade Guardians. The Jungle Guardian is revealed to be a descendant of an ancient lineage that has been protecting the sacred lands from outsiders for centuries, caught between the unyielding forces of nature and the relentless march of technology. Both empires are forced to reassess their strategies. Emperor Cato, impressed by the Khmer's ancient knowledge, sends an envoy to negotiate an alliance. Empress Sora, ever the pragmatist, recognizes the value of the Khmer's jungle mastery and offers them protection and resources in exchange for their support against the Blazing Sun. The diplomatic proceedings are manipulated by Shadow God Alpha into failing so badly that they just increase tensions even further. The envoy sent by Emperor Cato is captured by the Jungle Guardians' forces, who misinterpret their intentions as hostile. In the ensuing skirmish, the Jungle Guardian is grievously injured, and his forces retreat deeper into the jungle, leaving the empires to face each other without the potential ally. Emperor Cato, driven by anger and desperation, orders a full-scale assault on the retreating Frostspire forces. The battle becomes a fiery snake through the dense foliage, with the Sunfire maneuver gear cutting a path of destruction as it chases the elusive Jade Guardians. The air is thick with the scent of burning vegetation and the screams of men and beasts alike. Empress Sora, realizing the potential for disaster, sends a contingent of her most trusted advisors to the Jungle Guardian. They find him barely clinging to life, surrounded by the remnants of his warriors. With their combined knowledge of ancient healing rituals and the power of the sacred relic, they managed to stabilize the Jungle Guardian's condition. In a rare moment of vulnerability, the Jungle Guardian reveals the true nature of Shadow God Alpha's power to the advisors. His tale is one of suffering and loss, a soul so tormented by the atrocities of war that he has embraced darkness to bring an end to the endless cycle of bloodshed. His ultimate goal is a utopia of shadows, where peace is not just a fleeting dream, but an eternal reality. The Jungle Guardian and the ancient Khmer civilization leaves Cambodia, finding Shadow God Alpha and joining his Empire of Shadow, leaving the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun to fight each other now in a final clash over who conquers Cambodia. The Battle of Angkor Wat commences as both sides converge on the ancient city, each seeking to claim it as their own. The Empire of Frostspire, bolstered by Empress Sora's newfound power, deploys her ice dragon, which soars above the battlefield, freezing the air and ground beneath it. Emperor Kato, not to be outdone, calls upon the might of his Phoenix siege engines, their fiery breath reducing the ancient structures to ash and ruin. The clash is fierce, the roars of the dragon echoing through the jungle, intermingling with the screeches of the phoenixes, and the clanging of steel on steel. The Empire of Blazing Sun soldiers, now wearing the new Phoenix armor, move swiftly through the battlefield, setting ablaze the Jade Guardians that dare to stand in their path. Yet, the Guardians are not easily defeated, their icy resilience withstanding the intense heat. Emperor Kato, observing the chaos from atop a rampart, sees an opportunity. He orders his archers to focus their fire on the ice dragon's wings, hoping to ground the beast. Their arrows, tipped with the volatile phoenix ashes, soar through the air, leaving trails of fire in their wake. The dragon roars in pain as the ash pierces its frosty scales, and it plummets to the earth, momentarily incapacitated. Then the Phoenix siege engines all fire upon the incapacitated and vulnerable and weakened ice dragon to finish it off. The dragon, wounded and unable to fly, attempts to defend itself with its powerful icy breath. However, the relentless barrage of fiery arrows from the Phoenix siege engines is too much for even its enchanted scales to withstand. The dragon's wings burn and melt, sending it crashing into the earth with a thunderous boom. The ground shakes as the creature roars in agony, its once majestic form now a twisted wreck of ice and charred flesh. The sacred relic then forcefully unmerges from Empress Sora's chi, just in time too. Any longer and she likely would have perished. Then the sacred relic comes apart, with surrounding bits of it then break off and begin to float around it, becoming separate but connected sacred artifacts. Each of the sacred artifacts having immensely powerful abilities in their own right. And to get the opportunity to learn about them, Empress Sora decides to, again, have the Empire of Frostspire, and let the Empire of Blazing Sun win this battle so that the Empire of Frostspire can better prepare and maybe win the overall war. The chaos of the battle provides the perfect cover for Sora's retreat. She gathers her remaining forces and makes a strategic withdrawal, leaving the stunned Emperor Kato and his victorious troops to survey the devastation of the once mighty jungle capital. The loss of the dragon is a heavy blow to Frostspire's morale, but Sora's swift action saves her from complete defeat. Shadow God Alpha observes, now having the Nature Guardian working under him, and having many ancient artifacts at his disposal, which he then absorbs into himself to enhance his own power even further.
Next, the two empires will have their simultaneous respective attempted conquests of Myanmar, but first they must again prepare. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to test and find out the abilities of all of the sacred artifacts that can split off of the sacred relic. Empress Sora and her council of alchemists and mages, now in possession of the fragmented sacred relic, begin a series of experiments to understand the full extent of its power. The artifacts pulse with ancient energy, each one resonating with a different aspect of the natural world. One by one, they unlock their secrets, revealing abilities that could change the course of the war. they discover that each artifact grants its wielder control over an element of nature: water, earth, fire, air, and even life itself. The Empire of Frostspire, now with a clearer understanding of the artifact's capabilities, unleashes a wave of jade-infused warriors, each with unique elemental powers. Their assaults become unpredictable and lethal, catching the blazing sun forces off guard. The skies darken as tornadoes of ice and fire ravage the battlefield, and the very earth seems to come alive with the power of the relic. Emperor Cato, in his Sunfire maneuver gear, watches in awe and terror as the new landscape of war unfolds before him. The Empire of Blazing Sun, on the other hand, attempts to research and harness celestial amplification, an advanced solar magic technique to amplify the Empire's offensive capabilities, and they do so in 3 ways. 1. Study methods to concentrate and amplify solar energy for devastating offensive spells. 2. Enhance the solar flare spell with increased intensity and wider area of effect, aiming to overwhelm Frostspire's defenses. And 3. Train troops in rapid deployment and maneuverability to exploit openings created by solar flare attacks, ensuring swift and decisive strikes. After weeks of intense study and experimentation, the mages of the Empire of Blazing Sun finally crack the code of celestial amplification. The news spreads throughout the Empire like wildfire, raising the morale of the soldiers and citizens alike. Emperor Cato, eager to test this newfound power, orders an immediate demonstration of their capabilities. In a controlled environment, the mages unleash a solar flare spell that dwarfs any seen before. The intensity of the light and heat is blinding, and the resulting explosion leaves a crater in the ground where once stood a mock fortress. The Empire of Frostspire, the Empire of Blazing Sun then begin their respective attempted conquests of Myanmar, but first they have strategies for when they clash with each other in the battle that will decide who conquers Myanmar.
The Empire of Frostspire's strategy elemental convergence consists of 3 parts. 1. Deploy Jade Guardians adept at switching between ice, earth, and water elemental forms based on tactical needs in Myanmar's diverse terrain. 2. Leverage elemental powers to alter and control battlefield conditions, creating advantageous terrain features and hindering Blazing Sun's mobility. And 3. Coordinate simultaneous elemental attacks to overwhelm and disorient Blazing Sun forces, exploiting elemental weaknesses and disrupting their formations. The Empire of Blazing Sun's strategy, Celestial Onslaught, also consists of 3 parts. 1. Initiate a series of solar flare assaults to disorient Frostspire forces and create openings for rapid advancement. 2. Amplify solar flare spells with celestial amplification, targeting key enemy positions and strategic points to maximize damage and chaos. And 3. Utilize enhanced maneuverability and tactical precision to evade elemental assaults and capitalize on weakened defenses, aiming for swift and decisive strikes. And then, the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun's respective attempted conquests of Myanmar begin. Empress Sora, with her newfound knowledge of the artifacts, deploys her elemental convergence strategy. Her Jade Guardians, now masters of multiple elements, move across the diverse terrain with unprecedented ease. In the rugged hills, they become living statues of ice, raining down hailstorms upon the Blazing Sun's advancing forces. In the lush valleys, they manipulate the earth to form sudden ravines, swallowing entire units whole. And in the rivers, they transform into whirlpools of water, drowning those who dare to cross. Emperor Cato, anticipating the elemental onslaught, employs his own tactics. His mages, now adept at celestial amplification, begin their relentless bombardment of solar flares. The intense heat and light pierce through the dense jungle, setting trees ablaze and creating smoke screens that obscure the battlefield. The Blazing Sun's archers, shielded by their new Phoenix Flame catalysts, shoot arrows tipped with solar energy that explode upon impact, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. The clash of elements is spectacular, as the jungle becomes a canvas for the dueling forces of fire and ice. Yet, the chaos is not without its toll. The very earth beneath them trembles as the two sides fight for dominance. The rivers boil and the skies darken with ash, creating an apocalyptic scene that echoes the intensity of their conflict. The sounds of steel clashing against jade, the roars of the sunfire engines, and the crackling of ice under the heat of the solar flares fill the air. Empress Sora, riding her jade dragon, orchestrates her troops with precision. The dragon's breath freezes the advancing flames, creating a chilling spectacle that sends chills down the spines of the blazing sun soldiers. Yet, Emperor Cato remains unfazed. His phoenix-armored knights march through the frozen wasteland, their fiery swords leaving trails of steam as they cut through the ice. The Inferno Ignition Core is put to use, powering up their weaponry to unprecedented levels. Emperor Cato then turns the Inferno Ignition Core up to its maximum power, forcing the Empire of Frostspire to retreat once more, and thus, the Empire of Blazing Sun controls the entirety of Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, Shadow God Alpha patiently waits, knowing that soon enough, his opportunity to destroy both of the warmongering empires will come. Just not quite yet, but he can wait. He is a patient person. The Empire of Frostspire and Empire of Blazing Sun's next target for respective conquest is the entirety of the Indian subcontinent. But first, they again must prepare. The Empire of Frostspire decides to attempt to develop Pete Walker armor, specialized gear that harnesses mountainous energies to enhance mobility and combat effectiveness in challenging terrains. In the heart of the Himalayas, the Empire's best blacksmiths and alchemists toil day and night. They experiment with infusing jade and the essence of the mountain spirits into their metal, aiming to create armor as agile as the wind and as unyielding as the peaks. The armor, if successful, would allow the wearer to scale cliffs and traverse treacherous landscapes with ease, turning the very mountains into a battleground that favored the Empire. After months of relentless effort, the first set of Peak Walker armor is forged. It's a sight to behold, gleaming emerald scales that shimmer in the light, each plate a testament to the Empire's mastery over the elements. The armor is tested in the harshest conditions, and the results are mixed. While it does indeed grant unparalleled mobility, the energy required to maintain its enchantments is taxing. The soldiers selected to wear it must be both physically and spiritually strong to handle its power. The Empire of Blazing Sun decides to attempt to research and develop Solar Dominion artifacts, relics imbued with solar energies, to establish dominance and strategic superiority in the Indian subcontinent. Their researchers and mages toil in hidden laboratories, studying ancient texts and conducting dangerous experiments. They seek to harness the power of the sun itself, bending it to their will, and forging artifacts that can channel this immense energy. After several months of trial and error, they create a set of prototypes. These artifacts are rumored to be capable of casting powerful spells that can scorch the earth and blind enemies with their brilliance. Emperor Cato, eager to maintain the momentum of his conquest, puts these new weapons to the test. He assembles a small, elite force equipped with the Solar Dominion artifacts and sends them on a reconnaissance mission into the foothills of the Himalayas. The mission is a success. Their adversaries are caught off guard by the sudden onslaught of solar fire, and the artifact's power is undeniable. The news of their victory reaches the imperial court, and whispers of invincibility begin to spread among the soldiers of the Blazing Sun, and thus, the Empire of Frostspire and Empire of Blazing Sun's respective attempted conquests of the Indian subcontinent begin. But, of course, both empires have strategies for their inevitable clash. The Empire of Frostspire's strategy cultural manipulation has three parts. 1. Utilize knowledge gained from cultural studies to infiltrate and undermine Blazing Sun's alliances and local support. 2. Deploy Pete Walker armor-equipped troops to exploit mountainous advantages where the Inferno Ignition Core doesn't work, setting traps and controlling strategic passes. And 3. Employ elemental convergence to unleash coordinated elemental assaults, exploiting terrain vulnerabilities and disrupting Blazing Sun's formations. The Empire of Blazing Sun's strategy Solar Ascendance also has 3 parts. 1. Deploy Solar Dominion artifacts to amplify solar magic, creating powerful defensive barriers and offensive bursts. 2. Align solar energies to enhance precision and intensity of solar flare attacks, targeting Frost Spire's fortified positions and disrupting their plans. And 3. Utilize solar maneuver gear to swiftly adapt to Frost Spire's tactics, exploiting gaps in defenses and maintaining fluidity in mountainous terrain. And thus, the Empire of Frostspire and Empire of Blazing Sun's respective attempted conquests of the Indian subcontinent begin. The Empire of Frostspire's cultural manipulation strategy is put into action. Empress Sora, having studied the intricate dance of diplomacy, sends her most cunning agents to infiltrate the courts of the local rulers. They whisper sweet promises of protection and shared prosperity, subtly hinting at the horrors that await those who side with the blazing sun. Their words are like seeds in fertile ground, taking root and growing into doubt and suspicion. The once solid alliances of the blazing sun begin to crumble as whispers of betrayal spread through their ranks. As the Frostspire agents weave their webs of deceit, the Peak Walker armor-equipped troops are deployed to the strategic passes of the Himalayas. These soldiers, chosen for their endurance and cunning, move like phantoms among the mountains. They set ingenious traps that lie in wait for the unsuspecting blazing sun forces, ready to spring at the perfect moment. The Frostspire's dominance over the high ground becomes a legend that echoes through the valleys, striking fear into the hearts of those who dare approach. The Empire of Blazing Sun, noticing the shift in the political landscape, hastens their preparations. Emperor Cato, ever the strategist, recognizes the need to secure the passes before the Frostspire can fully capitalize on their newfound advantage. He orders his mages to begin constructing solar barriers around the bases of the mountains, creating a formidable defense against the looming threat of Frostspire's elemental onslaught. The Solar Dominion artifacts are activated, and the air around the blazing sun's positions crackles with energy. The first flash occurs at the Kyber Pass, where Frostspire's sneak attacks are met with the blinding light of the solar flares. The intense heat and sudden brightness disorient the Peak Walker armor-clad soldiers, leaving them vulnerable to the swift and precise strikes of the Sunfire maneuver gear-equipped blazing sun warriors. The battle is fierce, with the Frostspire's Ice Dragon clashing against the blazing sun's Phoenix Siege engines, their breaths of fire and frost painting the sky with an eerie dance of destruction. In the heart of the Indian subcontinent, the ancient city of Pataliputra becomes the central stage for the unfolding drama. The grand capital of the Mauryan Empire, long abandoned, is now a battleground for the fate of the continent. Frostspire's elemental convergence meets the blazing sun's solar dominion in a display of power that leaves the ancient ruins scarred and the earth trembling. The Peak Walker armor, designed for high-altitude combat, gives Frostspire's soldiers an edge in the rugged Himalayan terrain. They scale cliffs and cross chasms with ease, striking fear into the hearts of the blazing sun's defenders. However, the Solar Dominion artifacts are not to be underestimated. Their energy shields hold firm against the relentless onslaught of ice and snow, creating an intense heat that evaporates the frost midair. Emperor Cato, observing the battle from his command post, sees the weakness in Frostspire's strategy. He orders his engineers to deploy a new weapon, the Inferno Ignition Core. This device, powered by the Phoenix Ashes, releases a fiery shockwave that devastates the Frostspire's ice traps and sends their soldiers reeling. The ground beneath them cracks, revealing molten lava that swallows the unprepared Peak Walkers. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Shadow God Alpha watches the battle unfold with cold detachment. His empire, The Empire of Shadow has been growing stronger with each victory, and the chaos of this war is ripe for exploitation. He sends emissaries to the weakened states, promising protection and prosperity under his rule. Many, desperate for an end to the endless conflict, begin to pledge their allegiance to the dark deity. Empress Sora, noticing the shifting tides of loyalty, decides to make a bold move. She reveals the true nature of the sacred relic to her troops and the people of the lands she has conquered. The power of the Ice Dragon, once feared, is now a beacon of hope. Her words resonate, and the morale of her forces skyrockets. With renewed vigor, they charge into battle, their icy breath freezing the very air as they fight for a cause they now truly believe in. The Battle of Pataliputra reaches its climax as the Empire of Frost spires. Jade Guardians face off against them. Blazing Sun's Sunfire maneuver gear-equipped soldiers. The clanging of metal and the roar of elemental magic fill the air. Emperor Kato, seeing his advantage slipping away, calls upon the Phoenix Flame Captains, channeling its power into a fiery tornado that sweeps across the battlefield. Yet, the Jade Guardians stand firm, their green energy shields absorbing the heat and redirecting it back into the sky. Empress Sora, feeling the momentum of the battle shift, orders a daring assault on the Blazing Sun's command center. Her elite troops, wearing the new Peakwalker armor, scale the solar barriers with unparalleled agility. As they breach the fortress, they come face to face with Emperor Kato, who stands ready to defend his empire. The two leaders engage in a fierce duel, their elemental powers clashing in a dance of ice and fire. Their fight is intense and exhausting, pushing both to their limits. Sora, her eyes gleaming with the light of the sacred relic, conjures an icy blast that sends Kato reeling. He retaliates with a blaze of solar energy, but Sora's armor absorbs the brunt of the attack. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Kato activates the Inferno Ignition core once more, unleashing a wave of fiery destruction that seems unstoppable. Empress Sora, though, powers through, leading to yet another decisive clash between them. Blades until Emperor Kato's Phoenix Steel Sword shatters, forcing him to retreat, and with him, his Empire of Blazing Sun, leading to the Empire of Frostspire having ended their losing streak and conquered the Indian subcontinent. And Shadow God Alpha is still observing, knowing that it's just one more battle until they will. Both know that the last battle will be the last, and spend a massive amount of time preparing. And then, and the end of their final battle, he will arrive and destroy both of their empires, the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun. Then, next and lastly, are going to do their respective conquests of Russia. But first, they must prepare, after all. This is the last conquest before the big final battle between them to decide everything. The Empire of Frostspire, a bit overconfident considering they won the last conquest, and this last one is in a place at their element. The cold! They decide to simply attempt to develop Arctic Sentinel, units elite troops specialized in Arctic warfare and frost magic. The development of these Arctic Sentinel units is met with both excitement and trepidation. The engineers and mages of Frostspire labor tirelessly in the harsh, frozen lands, pushing the boundaries of what is possible. They incorporate the most advanced technologies and the purest forms of ice magic into the creation of these soldiers. Their armor is crafted from the rarest of materials, fused with ancient spells that make them virtually impervious to the cold. Their weapons are enchanted to freeze enemies on contact, and their eyes burn with a cold blue flame that pierces through the icy fog of battle. The Empire of Blazing Sun, on the other hand, takes this much more seriously and attempts to develop Polaris artifacts relics, attuned to celestial energies for dominating Arctic warfare. Emperor Kato, refusing to be outdone by Frostspire's innovations, convenes his most brilliant minds and mystics to research and develop new weaponry capable of countering the cold. For months, they toil in secrecy, delving into ancient texts and conducting risky experiments in the heart of Japan's volcanic lands. The result of their labor is the creation of the Polaris artifacts, a series of weapons and armor imbued with the fiery essence of the sun and the resilience of the stars. The Polaris artifacts, once completed, are brought before Emperor Cato, who examines them with a mix of awe and apprehension. He holds a sword that gleams with the light of 1,000 suns, feeling the warmth radiating from it. The artifacts are distributed among his most trusted generals, each one a beacon of hope against the encroaching chill of the Arctic. The Empire of Frost Spire and the Empire of Blazing Sun begin their respective invasions of Russia. But first, they have strategies for when they end up clashing with each other to end the conquest. The Empire of Frost Spire's strategy, Frozen Veil, has 3 parts. 1. Deploy Arctic Sentinel units equipped with frost magic to create ice barriers and freeze terrain features, hindering Blazing Sun's movements. 2. Utilize Arctic camouflage to conceal troops and set ambushes along likely enemy routes, exploiting their unfamiliarity with Arctic warfare. And 3. Manipulate ice formations to channel and redirect solar flare attacks, neutralizing their impact and protecting key positions. The Empire of Blazing Sun strategy Solar Blizzard also has 3 parts. Activate Polaris artifacts to amplify solar magic, creating blizzards and solar flares to disorient and weaken Frost Spire forces. 2. Align solar energies for targeted solar flare assaults on Frost Spire's fortified positions, aiming to disrupt their defenses and create openings. And 3. Utilize Sunfire maneuver gear to maintain mobility and exploit gaps in Frost Spire's defenses, adapting to Arctic terrain challenges, and thus the respective final conquests of the Empire of Frost Spire and the Empire of Blazing Sun of Russia begin. The Empire of Frost Spire marches forth with their Arctic Sentinel units, leaving a trail of frost-bitten earth in their wake. Their first move is to secure the northernmost regions of the vast land, where the cold is most intense and the land is ripe for their control. The Russians, caught off guard by the sudden onslaught of the undead and the relentless march of the Frost Spire's living soldiers, are forced to retreat further south. The Russians, though hardy and accustomed to the cold, are no match for the supernatural forces that Sora has at her disposal. Emperor Cato's forces, on the other hand, deploy their Polaris artifacts in a masterful display of celestial power. The icy tundras are formed by the sudden influx of solar energy, creating a stark contrast between the two empires' advances. The Russians, seeing the fiery onslaught as a divine intervention, are torn between fighting the invaders and embracing them as saviors from the unnatural cold brought by Frost Spire. The Battle of the Urals becomes a pivotal point in the conflict. Emperor Cato leads his troops in a daring maneuver, using the Sunfire maneuver gear to navigate the treacherous mountain passes. The blazing trails they leave behind create temporary oases of warmth, allowing the Blazing Sun soldiers to keep moving without succumbing to the harsh Arctic conditions. This speed and agility catch Frost Spire's forces off guard, as they had underestimated the Japanese Empire's ability to adapt to the harsh terrain. Frost Spire's Frozen Veil strategy falters as Emperor Cato's solar-infused troops shatter the ice barriers with their newfound celestial heat. The Polaris artifacts, while not as flashy as the Frost Spire's Arctic Sentinels, prove their worth in combat, granting the Japanese forces the endurance and protection needed to combat the relentless cold. The Battle of the Urals turns into a grueling game of cat and mouse, with each side seeking to outflank and outsmart the other in the unforgiving Russian winter. Empress Sora, not one to be outdone, calls upon her darker powers to counteract the solar blizzard. The Empire of Frost Spire's alchemists created a new type of ammo for their firearm units, one that is resistant to the extreme cold and can pierce the Polaris-enhanced armor of the Blazing Sun forces. This technological leap gives them a new edge, as the Arctic Sentinels now serve not only as protectors, but as aggressive units capable of taking the fight directly to the heart of the Japanese lines. The clash of the Ural Mountains intensifies, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Frost Spire's firearm units lay down a relentless barrage of ice-tipped bullets, while the Blazing Sun's knights charge through the snow, their Phoenix Flame catalysts burning brilliantly against the stark white backdrop. The Phoenix siege engines roar to life, sending waves of fiery destruction against the Frost Spire's fortifications. The Empire of Frost Spire, recognizing the tenacity of their opponents, decides to deploy their most feared weapon, the Arctic Titan, a colossal construct of ice and steel. It towers over the battlefield, its eyes burning with the cold fury of 1,000 winters. The Titan's mere presence sends a shiver down the spines of the Blazing Sun soldiers, and its roar echoes through the valleys like the call of a vengeful god. Emperor Cato, seeing the Titan's potential to turn the tide of the battle, orders a concentrated assault on the monstrous machine. His knights in Sunfire maneuver Gear Leap into action, their swords and spears glowing with the intensity of the solar wind. The Titan, though formidable, is not invincible. Cracks begin to appear in its icy armor under the relentless onslaught of the solar-infused weapon. The Battle of the Urals stretches on with neither side willing to concede. The Empire of Blazing Sun's ingenious use of Polaris artifacts to war. The battlefield is met with Frost Spire's cunning adaptation of their Frozen Veil strategy. The once frigid wasteland becomes a battleground of flaming swords and icy blasts. The air is thick with the roar of clashing steel and the screams of the dying. But eventually, the initially far better prepared Empire ends up winning the battle, and thus conquering Russia. And that Empire is the Empire of Blazing Sun, the Empire of Frost Spire. Despite their technological advancements and powerful Arctic Titan, had underestimated the sheer determination and adaptability of Emperor Cato and his Blazing Sun forces. As the Titan falls, its once mighty form now a shattered wreckage on the battlefield. The tide of the war begins to turn. The Frost Spire's troops, demoralized by the loss of their trump card, start to falter. Emperor Cato, his eyes gleaming with triumph, rallies his troops. He knows that this victory is not just for Japan, but for all those who seek freedom from the icy grip of Frost Spire. The Phoenix Flame catalyst burns brighter than ever before, and the soldiers of the Blazing Sun charge forward with renewed vigor. The clang of steel against jade, and the roar of flames against ice echo across the steppes. The Empire of Frost Spire retreats one final time, knowing that this battle was irrelevant compared to the final battle to come. In the aftermath of the Battle of the Urals, the Empire of Blazing Sun takes control of the vast Russian lands. The victory is celebrated with a mix of relief and solemnity, for the cost of lives is never forgotten. Emperor Cato, now in control of Asia from Japan to the edge of Europe, begins to consolidate his power. His people look to him for guidance and protection from the ever-looming threat of the shadow god Alpha.
But, of course, there will come the final battle between the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun for control over all of Asia, and thus, for 280 years. Both empires prepare 10 things over those years. The Empire of Frostspire prepares the following 10 things. 1. Celestial Frost Nova, a devastating magical spell that unleashes a freezing shockwave, immobilizing and damaging enemy forces. 2. Eternal Frost Armor, advanced armor imbued with perpetual frost magic, offering unparalleled defense against both physical and magical attacks. 3. Avatar of Frost, summon a colossal elemental embodiment of ice and snow, capable of crushing enemy formations and freezing entire battlefields. 4. Frost Spire Citadel, construct an impregnable fortress fortified with enchanted ice walls and automated frost defenses. 5. Glacial Amplifier, device that enhances the potency and range of frost-based spells and abilities across the battlefield. 6. Icebound Wyverns, train and deploy elite aerial units capable of freezing enemies with icy breath and disrupting enemy aerial superiority. 7. Arctic Teleportation Network. Establish a network of magical portals across strategic locations, enabling rapid deployment and logistical advantage. 8. Snowstorm Sentinels, autonomous constructs powered by elemental magic, patrolling and defending key locations from intruders. 9. Cryogenic warships, construct formidable naval vessels armed with cryogenic cannons, freezing enemy ships and controlling sea battles. And finally 10. Frozen Heart Elixir, potion that enhances resilience and stamina, granting soldiers temporary immunity to frost-based attacks and enhancing combat endurance.
While the Empire of Blazing Sun prepared the following 10 things. 1. Solar Eclipse Cannon, a colossal weapon harnessing solar energy to unleash devastating blasts capable of incinerating enemy fortifications. 2. Solaris Ascendant Armor, advanced armor infused with Solaris Divine Essence, providing unparalleled protection and augmenting offensive capabilities. 3. Celestial Fury Blade, a celestial sword forged from meteoric iron, capable of channeling solar energy into devastating melee attacks. 4. Sunfire Phoenix Summon, a majestic phoenix imbued with solar flames, able to incinerate enemy formations and provide aerial superiority. 5. Solar Nexus Fortress Constructa, fortified stronghold powered by celestial energies, equipped with automated solar defenses and strategic command centers. 6. Luminous Vanguard Elite Infantry units equipped with solar-powered weaponry, capable of precision strikes and rapid deployment. 7. Astral Manipulation Matrix device that manipulates celestial alignments to enhance solar magic potency and precision across the battlefield. 8. Radiant Skyships develop advanced aerial vessels powered by solar sails, capable of swift maneuvers and unleashing solar-based aerial assaults. 9. Solar Beacon Network establish a network of celestial beacons to enhance communication, surveillance, and magical coordination. And finally, 10. Eternal Radiance Elixir Potion that grants temporary invulnerability to solar-based attacks and enhances soldiers' combat prowess with divine energy. And thusly, finally, after 280 years of preparation and research, in the year 999, the Empire of Frostspire and the Empire of Blazing Sun engage in the final battle for the control of all of the continent of Asia. The Battle of the Great Wall commences with a display of power never before seen on the continent. Emperor Cato, standing atop the Solar Nexus fortress, watches as the Luminous Vanguard and the Sunfire Phoenixes take to the skies. Their fiery wings cast a warm glow over the horizon, a stark contrast to the icy blasts of the Frostspire's icebound wyverns. Empress Sora, in her eternal frost armor, commands the Frozen Heart Elixir-enhanced soldiers. They march through the snow, their footsteps leaving trails of frost in their wake. The clash of their weapons against the Solaris Ascendant armor of the Blazing Sun's knights echoes across the desolate landscape. The two sides are equally matched, their armies clashing with a ferocity that can only come from centuries of preparation. The Celestial Frost Nova is deployed, a swirling vortex of ice and wind that sweeps across the battlefield, decimating everything in its path. Emperor Cato, unfazed, counters with the Solar Eclipse Cannon, unleashing a beam of pure solar energy that pierces the frozen sky. The blast shatters the Nova, sending shards of ice flying in every direction. But the cannon's power does not go unanswered. The Glacial Amplifier responds, redirecting the solar beam into a wall of ice that stands firm against the onslaught. The Frostspire Citadel looms in the distance, a bastion of cold and darkness. It is the heart of Empress Sora's power, a fortress that has never been breached. Emperor Cato knows that to win the war, he must claim this stronghold. He orders his radiant skyships to advance, their cannons blazing with solar fury. The Citadel's defenses come to life, firing back with the cryogenic warship's deadly ice cannons. The sky is ablaze with the dance of fire and ice, a fiery ballet of destruction. On the ground, the luminous vanguard clashes with the Arctic Sentinel units. The Sunfire Phoenixes soar through the air, their fiery wings illuminating the night as they dive into the enemy lines. The Sentinels, armed with Peakwalker armor, stand firm, their jade-infused weapons slicing through the fiery onslaught. The clanging of steel and the crackling of ice fills the air, as the two sides become locked in an epic struggle for supremacy. The Emperor's eyes narrow as he observes the battle from the safety of the Solar Nexus fortress. He knows that the key to victory lies within the Frostspire Citadel. He sends a contingent of his most elite warriors, the Phoenix Legion, to infiltrate the Citadel and sabotage its defenses from within. They are equipped with the Eternal Radiance Elixir, granting them the speed and strength to bypass the relentless ice storms and the watchful gaze of the Arctic sentries. The Phoenix Legion's approach is swift and silent. They navigate the treacherous landscape of the Frostspire Citadel, avoiding detection by the patrolling undead. Once inside, they set to work, planting explosive charges on the massive crystal pylons that hold the Citadel's power. If they succeed, the Citadel will fall, and with it, the heart of the Frostspire Empire above the fray. Shadow God Alpha watches from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. He has not forgotten the destruction wrought upon his homelands, nor the suffering of his people. His empire of darkness grows stronger, fed by the chaos and despair of the warring factions. He knows that when the dust settles, he will have his opportunity to rise and claim the continent for himself. The Phoenix Legion's sabotage reaches its climax as the explosives are set, the ground trembles, and the pylons crack. The Citadel's power fluctuates, and the Arctic Sentinels falter. The luminous vanguard seizes the moment, their Sunfire maneuver gear propelling them through the weakened defenses. Empress Sora, feeling the disturbance, leaves her throne room, her eyes burning with icy rage. On the battlements, the Phoenix Legion and the Arctic Sentinels engage in a fierce duel. The Sentinels, now aware of the intrusion, fight with renewed ferocity. Yet, the Phoenix Legion, fueled by the Eternal Radiance Elixir, push forward. The air is filled with the scent of burning jade and the roar of clashing steel. The outcome of the battle hangs in the balance as the Phoenix Legion charges towards the throne room. Their mission almost complete. Emperor Cato, watching from the Solar Nexus fortress, feels a surge of hope. If the Citadel falls, the war will be over, and he will be the undisputed ruler of Asia. But he also feels a twinge of doubt. Can he truly claim victory if he does not face Empress Sora himself? The Phoenix Legion reaches the heart of the Citadel, the chamber where Empress Sora awaits. The doors fly open, and the room is bathed in a fiery glow. Sora, clad in her eternal frost armor, stands tall, her eyes ablaze with the power of the sacred relic. The two sides pause, each taking in the other's might. Shadow God Alpha, sensing the critical juncture of the battle, descends from the shadows. He knows that the fate of Asia will soon be decided, and with it, the fate of his own nascent empire. Yet, he remains patient, his gaze unwavering, as the two titans of ice and fire clash in a dance of destruction. His time will come when the dust has settled, and the survivors are ripe for his dark embrace. The Phoenix Legion charges, their celestial fury blades slicing through the frigid air. The Arctic Sentinels respond with a barrage of jade-tipped arrows, which are in turn vaporized by the blazing aura of the Sunfire Phoenixes. The clanging of steel against ice echoes through the chamber, a symphony of war that has played out countless times in the annals of history. The battle is a spectacle of elemental fury. The Emperor's Solaris Ascendant armor gleams in the light of the setting sun, while Empress Sora's Frostspire armor crackles with the power of the celestial Frost Nova. The ground beneath them freezes and thaws as the two leaders engage in a duel that will determine the future of the continent. The air is thick with tension as the final moments of the battle draw near. The Phoenix Legion's explosives are set to detonate, and the Solar Nexus fortress is poised too. deliver the final blow to the Frostspire Citadel. Yet, Shadow God Alpha waits, his power coiled like a serpent ready to strike. The explosion rocks the Citadel, sending shards of jade and ice flying in every direction. The Phoenix Legion retreats, their mission accomplished. The Frostspire forces, now leaderless, fall back, their will to fight shattered. The Empire of Blazing Sun emerges victorious, their banners fluttering in the smoky air. Emperor Cato steps forth, his gaze searching the wreckage for any sign of his enemy. But Sora is nowhere to be found. The whispers of the shadows grow louder, and a chill runs down his spine. He knows that the Shadow God has been watching, waiting for the moment of triumph to turn to ashes. The Empire of Shadow emerges from the chaos, their silent approach unnoticed amidst the cacophony of battle. The surviving soldiers of both sides look on in, horror as a new enemy emerges from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with dark intent. The war is not over, it has merely entered a new phase. Shadow God Alpha stands before the defeated forces, his presence a living embodiment of fear and despair. He speaks in a voice that echoes through the ages. Your wars have ravaged the land, but now there will be peace. My peace. The once mighty empires now face a threat that dwarfs their own ambitions, and the true battle for the soul of Asia is about to begin. Shadow God Alpha then suddenly moves so fast, he appears to teleport in front of Empress Sora, who, remembering the prophecy from long ago, in her last moments, uses all of her remaining power to launch the sacred relic to the west, into Europe, where the sacred artifacts all split off, all land across Europe, most landing across the Italian peninsula, and in the forest of Brocliant near France, while the sacred relic lands in San Marino, near a young noble with grand ambitions named Marcus Aurelius. Shadow God Alpha then impales Empress Sora with one of his tendrils of darkness, killing her instantly, then absorbing her power and even her body into himself through that same tendril of darkness with the fall of Frostspire's Empress. The remaining Frostspire forces are left leaderless and demoralized. The Shadow God's Empire of Shadow swiftly takes control, assimilating the survivors into his ever-growing forces. Meanwhile, in Japan, Emperor Cato, though victorious in battle, is haunted by the knowledge that the war has merely been the opening act to a far greater struggle. The prophecy of the reborn god echoes through his mind as he watches the last of the Frostspire forces retreat. He knows that the true battle for Asia is yet to come. Word of the Shadow God's rise spreads like wildfire across the continent. The people of the once great empires live in fear, unsure of what the future holds. Yet, amidst the chaos, a new hope emerges. Marcus Aurelius, the young noble from San Marino, discovers the sacred relic in his lands. Its power calls to him, and he is compelled to take it up, sensing the coming storm. He begins to gather those who still believe in the virtues of light and justice, his goal to unite the fragmented lands of Europe and challenge the Shadow God before his power becomes too great to oppose. As the Shadow God tightens his grip on Asia, Marcus starts to organize his own forces in Europe, seeking alliances and preparing for the inevitable clash of civilizations. His visions of a world united under a banner of peace and prosperity fuel his ambition. The stage is set for a new era of conflict as the light of hope from the west grows brighter in contrast to the darkening skies of the east. The fate of the world rests on the shoulders of these two leaders, each wielding a piece of the ancient prophecy. The Shadow God, feeling the surge of power from the west, turns his gaze towards Europe. He knows that the time has come to fulfill his destiny and bring the entire world under his dominion. The Empire of Shadow begins to march westward, leaving a trail of frozen wasteland in its wake. The once proud lands of Asia are now a mere stepping stone in the Shadow God's quest for total control. Marcus Aurelius, now a beacon of hope, prepares his people for the clash of titans that is to come. He knows that the war will not be won by strength alone, but by the hearts and minds of those who fight for a better tomorrow. The world watches with bated breath as the forces of light and shadow converge on the battlefield of destiny. The echoes of their clashes will resonate through time, shaping the course of history and the very essence of humanity itself. Then, God Emperor Marcus Aurelius resets time back to the year 1000 all, just before Shadow God Alpha can reach his full potential and stop him, leaving him super frustrated, and thus, when this is about to happen the next time, he then suddenly begins flying off into space, and then he reaches his full potential and then goes from just outside of Earth's orbit to a planet on the outer edges of Andromeda Galaxy within a Planck instant, and there he finds a planet with a quaint little civilization on it, led by a cloaked figure who he then approaches. "Well then, who are you, newcomer?" the cloaked figure asks. Shadow God Alpha pauses for a moment to think, then responds, "Call me the Shadow God, to be continued."
The cloaked figure nods, unperturbed by the grandeur of the name. "What brings you to our galaxy, Shadow God?" "I seek to bring about change to all of existence and get rid of many awful things as concepts, to prevent the same thing that happened to me and so many from my home planet from happening infinitely more times across all of existence for all of eternity," Shadow God Alpha explains. The cloaked figure remains calm, stroking a glowing crystal staff. A noble quest indeed, but one fraught with danger and complexity. The Andromeda is vast, and not all civilizations will bend to your will so easily. "I seek to do it, no matter the costs," Shadow God Alpha says, his utter determination in such a good cause, wooing the cloaked figure and the entire planet into loyally serving under him. The cloaked figure, intrigued by Alpha's resolve, decides to share his own wisdom. "The path you wish to walk is one of great responsibility. To reshape existence is to become a force that transcends the very fabric of reality. Are you prepared for the burden? I've been through enough pain to know that any burden would be worth it to prevent endlessly more pain," Shadow God Alpha says quite simply, yet determinedly, and thus the cloaked figure decides to follow Shadow God Alpha to the utmost. The two leaders, one cloaked in shadow and the other in mystery, form an alliance, their goals aligned. The planet, once isolated, now becomes a bastion of power and knowledge, a stepping stone for the Shadow God's cosmic ambitions. Together, they begin to construct a fleet of starships, each one a masterpiece of technology and magic, capable of traversing the vast distances of space. But first, Shadow God Alpha decides that he needs a new title, and upon mentioning that on his home planet he was the Emperor of a utopia known as the Empire of Darkness, the cloaked figure had this to say in response. "Well then, how about the Dark Emperor as your new title, sire?" The cloaked figure suggests. "That actually works well. I'll use that title." Shadow God Alpha, now the Dark Emperor, Alpha responds. The Dark Emperor Alpha and the cloaked figure, now known as the Andromedan Oracle, stand on the gleaming bridge of their flagship, the Star of Oblivion. The fleet of starships stretches out behind them, a swarm of black and silver points of light against the vast tapestry of stars. They are ready to embark on their mission to redefine existence itself. And thusly, the Dark Emperor Alpha begins to expand his space shadow empire, with his two main headquarters being on the planet, now dubbed the Shadow Planet, and the planet Venus in the solar system, from which he subtly influences events on Earth sometimes.
The Dark Emperor Alpha, now with a new purpose and an unyielding drive, starts to bring peace and prosperity to the systems they conquer. The Andromedan Oracle advises him with ancient wisdom, guiding his hand as they reshape the cosmos. Their methods are swift and decisive, but not without mercy. Worlds are spared if they submit willingly, and those who resist are given a chance to join them, or face the cold embrace of oblivion. The Dark Emperor Alpha, though, continuously peers back at the planet Earth as the over a millennium goes by, and, well, in the grand scheme of things, he is making effectively no progress towards his goal, and thus, once the Shadow Planet had outlived its usefulness, he left a good majority of his power within it to retrieve at a later point in time, and left the Shadow Planet devastated, with only the cloaked figure left residing upon it. Then the Dark Emperor Alpha began to puppet and manipulate some events on Earth, leading up to the shattering of the United States of America, then puppeting other events, like when he directed an entire solar flare at a single state, or repeatedly brought about disasters within the state of California. But after his greatest manipulation, which brought together many dark powers, and destroyed and corrupted a champion of some sort, he decided to arrive on the planet, in the state of Alabama, controlled by the Shadow King, one of the dark powers in California. That brought about the destruction and corruption of the champion. And he said to them, "People of Alabama, I am he whom you have been awaiting. I am he who will lead you to victory against the Shadow King. But know this, I do not come to play the role of a savior. I am not here to liberate you. I am here because it suits my purposes. I am the Dark Emperor, and I claim this realm as my own." And then after he sensed that the Shadow King as well, as the Shadow Queen were planning on attempting to take him down, he simply made them into his puppets, then aliens attacked. Then God Emperor Marcus Aurelius returned, and was with another God Emperor, and they tried to destroy him with simple snaps of their fingers. But they failed, and he was able to reform and reincarnate, then, taking a form much more similar to that which he had taken as Shadow God Alpha, he formed a new empire of Shadow, an empire of Shadowstein, and he finally shattered that stupid sacred relic that he sought out the reincarnations of his most loyal former puppets to be his advisors, as a war in space then broke out, and eventually he achieved his happy ending.